If you're looking for a specific profile for your company and you want to work together with a recruiting agency, one of the first questions beyond with which recruiting agency to work with is also what type of model do I want to go for? Because there are various models how you can pay for the service of a recruiting agency. And in today's episode, we're going to look at two of the most common models, which is the success-based fee and the retention model. Let's check it out. Hi, this is Laura, and you're listening to the CareerBee Talks podcast, where we share all the newest insights on the recruiting world from both sides, the candidate perspective and the company perspective. Let's jump right in. So I think when we talk about the success-based fee, it's rather straightforward. What it means is you hire a recruiting agency, you in advance define a success-based fee, meaning a percentage rate of the annual salary of that candidate that is going to be hired, which in generally, or at least in Germany, it varies between 15 to 30% of that. And then you mostly only pay once the person has been hired. So the recruiting agency takes the full risk in that sense of only getting paid if they actually found you somebody. Of course, there are variations to that. You can negotiate. Sometimes you pay something in advance, sometimes not, etc., etc. But let's say the most basic form of it is what I just described. And I think what is a little bit more difficult to describe is the retention model. So maybe Luca, you can show us a little bit also based on our experience what a retention model could look like.
Yeah, very good question. So in comparison to the success phase-based fee, where you only pay if actually someone is hired, with the retention model, the recruiting agency offers for a fixed amount paid per month, they will provide recruiting services for you, right? So it's a different approach. You don't have this model, oh, money is only paid in case of in case of success. So it requires a higher trust on both sides, of course. You can still define milestones, for example, but in general, you agree on a fixed amount of money per month, for example, and for this, you will get the recruiting services. An advantage of this retention model is that it provides planning security on both sides, right? So you as a company, you know exactly, okay, this is the amount of money that I have to pay per month. You can clearly budget that in. And also for the recruiting company, it has the advantage that they know a certain amount of revenue that they will make. Usually you can define, okay, we do this for 3 months, we do this for 6 months, we do this for 12 months until someone can cancel. But both sides at least get some planning security.
Yeah. And maybe also, let's say the difference within the service. I mean, of course, it's very difficult to specify because as you start talking to recruiting agencies, you'll also notice everyone offers a little bit of a different thing. But very commonly in retention models, what is included is not only like this active sourcing part, but more than anything, really also, social media posts on the job, but I'm talking about LinkedIn. So your job gets promoted, applications come in, the recruiting agency manages those applications. So it's not only this like outreach to candidates, but they try to also get candidates in. So very commonly it's used when a company is hiring the same profile in a higher amount. So let's say 5 sales managers instead of 1, because going with the actual success-based fee would be very expensive if you have to pay 30% for every single profile instead of the 5. And then for the recruiting agency, they can lower the price because by using these methods, like for example, knowing how to promote the job, in which platforms to promote the job, so they get applications in and don't have to look for every single person themselves, allows them also to lower the cost. And that's why it can also be a win-win, but it always depends what the situation is and what service is covered. Did I forget any other typical service that would be included in a retention model?
No, I think it's exactly like you said. I would maybe just highlight why that is the case. So imagine you are a recruiting company, and my client only wants to pay me on a success-based fees, right? So of course it's a higher risk for me because even if I'm confident in my skills and that I will find someone, maybe you don't end up hiring anyone regardless because you have a hiring freeze, and then that's the model. Then I don't make any money, which is fine. It just means the risk, as you said, Laura, in the beginning, is on the side of the recruitment agency, so the price will be higher. And I will have a tough time justifying to my finance people as a recruiter that I even spend more, for example, on a social media ad. So this is why usually when you have a success fee model, the company will not run social media ads for you or LinkedIn job posts or whatever. However, on the other side, on a retained model, you pay me per month. I can count on this. So I can also do our own internal calculations. I can say, okay, for this, I can run a social media campaign, for example, or a LinkedIn job ads campaign. I can invest some money also upfront than as a recruiter. So this is just why it's a difference in risk and financial security that makes the difference.
Right. And I mean, before we talk about how companies can make up their mind which model fits them best, maybe talking from the recruiter perspective, and then I'm just going to ask you bluntly, Luca, what model do you prefer as a recruiter? What is more fun?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So if I am a company and I'm choosing a recruiting vendor, I would not make the decision based on which model they are offering. That's maybe the first one. I would always pick the recruiter who I feel the best connection with. And then what we do, for example, at CareerBee is like we tailor our offer to your needs. So we can work both ways. I know some bigger recruitment companies don't have this flexibility. This is why it's good to work with a smaller recruitment agency like us, because we can offer you the terms that we agree on. I don't have to get approval by some anonymous CFO somewhere sitting, which is fine and has its value because bigger companies, they need to work more structured. So I would not pick based on the model, but based on the recruiter. On the other side, I like both models. I like the retained models because usually the communication is a bit tighter. The company feels like they are investing already upfront. So, for example, whenever I send an email, I get an immediate response because they're like, "Oh, I'm paying for the service. I want to get the most out of it." So usually it's a very high commitment on the side of the client. That's why I like them. On the other hand, I also like success-based working, especially if I feel like this communication is there because of course the earnings are a bit higher, so you feel like, oh, I get a good reward for the good work that I put in. So for me, the answer is it depends on the client as well. I'm happy to work both. More important is that I have a good connection with my company there.
Yeah, I really like that you said that because I think in the end it comes down to that. And sometimes within the same company, you could choose to use both models for different positions or during
Yeah,
different times as let's say you progress in the collaboration. Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, definitely. I think we've done so
Yeah.
actually. Sometimes you also run some mixed models. It always depends on the situation and what are the needs of the relationship. What does the client need? What does the recruiting service provider need? And then let's find a solution that works for both.
Absolutely. Now, maybe switching it around, we talked about what you personally like based as a recruiter, of course. Let's think about some examples how a company can decide what could make most sense based on the situation. I think we already talked about one thing, which I'm just going to repeat, or let's say you started with a budget, actually. I leave the budget thing to you. I'll start with the one thing I mentioned, which is the amount of positions you have to fill. So let's say you're in a high growth phase and you need to hire, I don't know, 50 people until the end of the year. And many of these people are within the same position type, let's say sales managers. Then it could make sense to think in a retention model budget-wise, because if not, it might be too expensive. But then also because it is a repetition of specific roles, also for the recruiter, for the recruiting agency, it could make sense to go this way so that you kind of make more for the time and can hire faster as you do have this pressure. So the amount of positions you need to fill could be an indicator which model works best. And Luca, you mentioned budget in general, right? That's also a thought you need to consider.
Yeah, of course. So in the end, for a success, let's say you have the same amount of positions to fulfill. You just want to decide for this position that I need next year. Do I want to do a success based or do I want to retain? Then in the end, the success based, if it goes well, will be higher, right? The cost that you will bear as a company will be higher. Again, we talked about this risk on the side of the recruiting agency. They will have higher prices, logically. So number one, maybe you just have to spend, just want to spend a certain amount, then I would go for retained. Another question that I think in reality a lot of time, in practice is a lot of time very important, is what does the organization have experience with? So let's say I'm an HR person and I just started new out at this company, and I hear, well, the CEO or the CFO or whoever, the HR VP of HR or whatever, they have a lot of good experience with success-based fees. And it always works great, and they're happy to pay for good people. They never had any issue. Well, most likely this company wants to do that in the future, even if you personally, as a new starter, have a different approach. On the other hand, I know some companies, they just hate this model. They like, oh, I always have to pay so much. It costs 20,000 euros. And then the person only stays with us for 1 year. So this is an organization that has over time repeatedly made bad experience. So they might be more open to a retained model. So for you as an HR person, for example, if you are thinking about, oh, this is how I should talk with my leadership, inquire what they've done in the past. I do this when I talk to clients. I always ask, what experience do you have? Have you worked with a recruiting agency? Yes or no? If the answer is yes, what model do you usually work on? Is it success-based or retained? And then we oftentimes also send 2 offers so they can decide between them.
Right. Right. And I think another thing is really to look at the position itself, right? Because there are some positions where even if you have the best job ads out there, nobody will apply because they're very specialized and those people that could do the job already have a job. And then you actually don't have so much of a choice and you will have to go by this more success-based fee where the recruiter invests their time and their resources to really actively engage in conversations with potential candidates and then try to convince them for your company. So here, depending on the position type, you will have to choose one or the other sometimes. But I do recommend you to really have a good discussion with this recruiter of the recruiting agency in advance so that the recruiter can also give you their insights and their expertise. And if you realize they don't have that much expertise, that's also a sign to simply not work with them. But a good recruiter, a recruiter that cares about long-term collaboration, will always help you identify which model fits best, also based on the position that you're currently recruiting.
Yeah. If they can offer them. For a lot of times recruiters' hands are tied. They can only offer what the company policy says. But yeah, if they can, it's very good. To highlight your point, maybe make it more concrete. Let's say you have, and this is the time where a lot of times the recruiter and company don't see, they are not aligned on the model that they prefer. So let's say you have a very, very technical search, a very unique profile. There's only 50 people like this in the world, and what you've got the skill set, it's a very rare skill set. And the recruiter you talk to, you have a good feeling, but they have never done this specific profile, which for you is okay because you cannot expect, it's so rare, right? You don't expect the recruiter to know. You would just like to have them a good process. But in this scenario, the recruiter will push for a retained model times because they're like, oh, I don't know this position. I don't actually know only 50 people. Like I can try, but the chances that it works out are rather low, right? So they will be like, oh yeah, can we do a retained model? And then the company on the other hand will be like, well, I don't actually trust necessarily that you can find someone, right? So they, of course, the company then wants to do the success fee model.
Right.
So, right, because then they only want to pay if the results are there, which is fair.
Yeah.
And so this is a setup where a lot of times you have to find a common ground. As you said in the beginning, Laura, there are some variations. In this case, what I would recommend is maybe, okay, let's have a very, very high part of it being success-based, but maybe we could do a small fee in advance so the recruiter knows, okay, at least I make, I don't know, 2,000, 3,000 euros working on this, and he'll put a lot of effort into it, and then hopefully, but a big part of it will be paid after success, right? So this could be a mixture of both.
Right. And I like that as well. And I think maybe that, based on the conversation we've had so far, is one of the key lessons that companies can take away, that not one model works better than the other. Sometimes you have to mix the models. Sometimes you have to base it on your position, and even with the same recruiter, work with various models. So maybe the key takeaway from this is that, as everything in life, you have to personalize it to your situation. And more important than the model is really with whom are you working? And is that a recruiting agency that can adapt to your needs as they change over time, or as the current need is as well? So really take time to talk with a recruiter, not only about your position, but also about potential creative ideas on models for the payment itself. And also there you will be able to judge the recruiting agency very well and see if it fits.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I feel like a lot of times things in life are up for negotiation. And I often get the feeling when you don't work in sales, negotiations are, people don't like to negotiate, right? And especially, I'm not sure if that's also a German culture thing. Maybe it is that negotiations are seen as something negative. Well, I'm always happy to. Let's talk about very openly and say, okay, you want this, I want this. How can we find a common ground where both sides win?
Yeah.
That's usually the best negotiations.
Right, absolutely. So with this key takeaway, of course, check in with your recruiting agency, think about the positions you have to fill this year. But if you have any questions or feel unsure about it, you can always reach out to us. We always leave our emails, but also the link to our websites in the show notes. And we will be very happy to guide you and also to discuss potential collaboration ideas with you. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If you are a company who's currently looking to expand their team with amazing talent, make sure to check out our website, careerbeat.io, to learn more about our recruiting services and how we can help you find the best candidate for your open roles. On the other side, if you are a candidate who's currently looking to find a job in the US or Germany, make sure to explore our website, careerbeat.io/talents, to see how our masterclass and our additional career services can get you to find your dream job. In any case, you can always reach out to our team via the email team@careerbeat.io. We are so happy to continue sharing many more insights around recruiting and job searching.